Well, thank you, Louis. It's an honor to be sharing the platform with the esteemed audience here on the panel this afternoon. I would also like to thank the audience for tuning in to listen to this very important webinar. David sends his apologies for having to drop out at the last moment because of some medical issues with the family in the United States. So I'm covering in for him. The world is going through one of the most challenging phases at the moment, and there's no better time to talk about and, more importantly, address some of the challenges facing our own industry. Well, I came into this beautiful industry in 2008, straight out of the college, thinking, well, I've learned all these wonderful concepts around economy, statistics, analytics. Let's go out and get cracking, right? Applying those concepts to the real world data and gathering some actionable insights. A few months into the job, boom, recession hit. Worst time for the industry. During that time, I wanted to see what was the outcome, what kind of recovery did we see from the similar instances in the past? How did we deal with the chaos? It's then when I realized that we haven't really learned too much from the past, or as much from the past as we should have and we could have. So I went back to the drawing board and trying to analyze and think what exactly happened. Why aren't we able to learn from our past, from the past recessions, from the past pandemics? What exactly is happening? It is then when I figured out that our industry can also be explained through chaos theory, which basically says that a flap of a butterfly in one part of the world could result in a tornado somewhere else. What it's saying is a small difference in the input can result in massive differences in output over an extended period of time. Let's see how. So almost immediately after the recession in 2008, 2009, major critical decisions were taken by shipping lines, which would go on to define the shipping world we live in today. Now we all know that it's a long cycle, from in the shipping industry. For instance, when the ships are ordered, it's a long cycle. By the time the ships are ordered and delivered, it usually takes 18 to 24 months. So a lot of work goes into, forecasting the economy, the demand, the freight rates, bunker prices, so on and so forth, to support and justify those decisions. Now, all those decisions were taken based on the data that was available at that time. And that's where I think the chaos set in. Let's look at some numbers here. In 2011, in a period of 2011 to 2016, when those vessels were being ordered, the GDP was forecasted to grow, more than 4% in the next 5 years. Well, it didn't happen. The real world GDP grew at a much slower pace. Right? Of course, there were multiple reasons for it, but essentially the demand was misconstrued. So in the past, there have been, the industry was known, the container volumes were known to grow at 2.5 to 3 times of the GDP. That's no more the case actually. We have seen container volumes grow less than the GDP multiple times during the last decade. So similar trend continues. If you look at the period from 2016 after the alliances were formed, and after all the consolidations started happening, similar trend continued, right? Something else was forecasted, something had happened. Now, of course, nobody could have forecasted a pandemic into their forecasting models to take some critical decisions in the industry. Similar thing goes on with the GDP multiplier. Nobody thought that the freight rates would actually fluctuate as much as they did. In 2011, we thought that the freight rates might go back to 2010 levels. Well, they actually did in 2012, but they dropped faster than they went up. In 2016, again, we thought the freight rate would go up again. Well, they did go up, but probably not at the same level that we expected. Same story with bunker prices. 2011, the bunker prices were going up. We thought that bunker prices will keep going up. Well, they kept going up for some time, but and that probably was one of the biggest reasons why these big ships were ordered, right? To get to the economies of scale, the rise of cost savings from bunkers, I'm not very sure if those similar decisions would have been taken if the bunker prices were at today's levels. Well, 2016 saw the lowest bunker prices we've ever seen. We thought that it would remain that way for some time to come, but actually they went back up again. We have seen a number of fluctuations since then. What I'm trying to highlight here is, we take decisions based on the data that is available to us, and small fluctuations in those data can lead to massive problems, in the future. For instance, I just highlighted, the GDP projections, GDP multiplier, bunker prices, fluctuating freight levels. Small differences in this data in our assumptions in the forecasting models led to liner consolidation. We have seen bankruptcy. We have seen overcapacity. We are dealing with extremely low margins. Now, fast forward 10 years since I joined the industry. Now we talk about big data. We talk about machine learning. We talk about IoT, robotics, autonomous vehicles, so on and so forth. But what good is it if the technology cannot solve our problems, right? It's good to have these technologies to understand what has happened in the past, but it's no good unless it can help us prepare for the future. So, I think the industry has been slow to change. There have been lack of standards in our industry. There's, of course, the cost and complexity of legacy systems, the data privacy and security issues. These are broader issues which definitely have to be addressed, which leads to poor coordination between the partners. We have little access to real-time data. There's poor cargo visibility and predictability. And I think the most important thing that I would like to highlight here is there's no global body governing the global shipping data. Reliable data is only available on some trade lanes. There's some countries, some data sources, which actually provide some kind of data wherein you can draw some actionable insights, but there's no link between those databases. GCC has none, right? So, for instance, now you want to realize the full impact of COVID in UAE or in Saudi or in Bahrain or GCC as a whole, you actually can't do that. You can do that for your own facilities because you have certain data, but as an industry, it's very difficult to analyze the full impact. For instance, in UAE, now here we have 8 container ports, 5 terminal operators, 7 emirates. Trading partners for different emirates could be significantly different sometimes. So you can analyze the data for your own facilities, but due to lack of collaboration, no reliable data is actually available to do in-depth country analysis, take some lessons, and pivot for the future. So it's impossible to learn from the past and present and pivot for the future unless we start to collaborate as industry, share our knowledge, and the only technology that can help us is the change in mindset. And it's really important we do that and quickly, because we know that this trend will repeat. We haven't seen the last recession yet. This is not the last pandemic that we are going through. Similar instances will happen in the past. And unless we collaborate, we will not be able to leave any legacy for the future generations who can actually look back and say, similar instances, what kind of decisions were taken in similar instances, and prepare themselves for these kind of pandemics and shocks. So collaboration will help us leverage the descriptive to prescriptive paradigm shift. We can always analyze what happened and why did it happen. I'm sure you all would agree that analyzing past is much easier because we already know the outcome. But it's no good unless that outcome can tell us, how do we prepare for the future? And that's where we need some, some findings, some conclusive findings from collaboration, from data sharing, that we can draw some actionable insights and put them to work. So I would say that the challenge in our industry was never the technology, right? Technology is a solution, but the challenge I see in our industry is collaboration. That's the biggest challenge we have at the moment. And that keeps us from learning our lessons. That keeps us from being flexible, agile. There's no collaboration with the stakeholders. And no technology can help us, to make that paradigm shift from descriptive to prescriptive analytics, unless we start to share data, between the partners, between the regions, and the whole world, ultimately. Once we do that, all these technologies, machine learning, artificial intelligence, can actually help us draw some actionable insights and leave some legacy for our future generations, who can actually take some decisions based on the data that we leave behind. And with that, I would like to hand over the baton to Louis. I think these are the challenges that I see from my experience. Collaboration is one of the key points that should be taken care of by the industry to prepare ourselves to pivot for the future. And there will be shocks going forward as well, but I think we can be much better prepared than we are today if we collaborate as an industry, as business partners, as competitors as well. So Louis,